All right, groovy. Well, good morning, everyone. I am Matthew Hegum. I am one of your organizers for the Seattle 1 Million Cups community. And so as a reminder, it's called 1 Million Cups for a reason. So whether you're drinking your tea, I know I've got my dandelion tea right here doing my little detox moment, or you have your coffee and you're rocking the caffeine train, all good. Grab that now so you have it on hand as we dive into today's 1 Million Cups. A couple of other things I want to share with you. As you know, or you might know if you've been here before, we meet every Wednesday at 9 a.m. like clockwork across the country. There's other chapters as well. So please mark that on your calendar and try to show up on a regular basis. One of the things that people often forget about networking and building relationships is that you have to show up multiple times so people can get to know you, so that they can really get to understand who you are and build that trust and rapport. It doesn't happen just from one visit. So keep that in mind. For this community here, you want to make sure that this Linktree URL is the one that you have on hand. So when you create your calendar invite, recurring event every Wednesday morning, you copy that link, paste it in the body of the little description, then you've always got what you need to jump into the community and move forward. But of course, we are also on Facebook and Instagram. We do have a newsletter. We don't send out a lot of communications through our newsletter, so just be mindful of that. But we also do have a LinkedIn group. So I want to encourage you to find us on LinkedIn so that you can stay connected as we make announcements about who our presenters are. We have other things that we got going on, so we'll share those on social media. Again, you'll get also on that link, of course, get the Zoom link. That's how many of you ended up here today. But you can also find and access the replay. So I mentioned earlier, we are recording. Eventually, that recording will go up onto the website, and then we'll have the replay available for sharing. So, for example, if you hear something today that really sparks interest for you, and you're like, hey, I know somebody who might be a good connection for today's presenter, you can then share that Zoom or that replay with them so they can actually find out a little bit more before you make the introduction or as part of your introduction to that person. And so what are we here to do as a community, or what are we about rather as a community? Well, a couple of things. Obviously, we are here to share ideas and support each other on our entrepreneurial journey. We are here to offer help. So that's the case in point. Tiara mentioned the Google Doc with the asks. If you look at the asks and see what kind of support people need, you can go over there and really see how you can offer help to other people. Maybe it's the area of expertise. Somebody today might say, hey, I'm struggling with this marketing issue. You might be a marketing consultant and have some ability or capacity to support that person navigating that issue. Of course, all said and done, we're here to build a strong community of entrepreneurs and business owners, business leaders, not just in the Seattle network, but as I'm sure you heard, we've got people from across the country on today's call. And we're here just to support each other and be that resource. Because as we all know, as organizational leaders, as entrepreneurs, sometimes it can get really lonely when you're all by yourself trying to solve your problems. So the answer is to connect, find community, and really collaborate and support each other. And some things that make us distinct, a couple things. One, we are here for presentations, not pitches. So we don't encourage our presenters to view you as meat at a store, right? We're not here to hunt you and eat you, right? As the presenters. Rather, we want to present our ideas, share what we're working on, get the ideas out on the table, and then as a community, again, talk about what those ideas are to support each other in lifting up our businesses. We're here to connect and not to do the quote traditional pray and spray networking or spray and pray networking, where you show up and you just kind of throw your business card at people, hope that something sticks. That's not what we're about here. Again, we're about community, but we also want to be very mindful of being radically and intentionally inclusive. So be mindful of your language, be mindful of other people's boundaries, respect them, respect their considerations and concerns, and just really be conscientious of your choices around how you're showing up in the space and communicating with others. As you know, as many of you know, we are a national community. We have 134 communities across the country, 3,500 attendees plus, and 700 plus volunteers. The majority of what's going on here is volunteer run. And so thank you, volunteers, myself included, for being a part of the glue that really keeps this national community of entrepreneurs moving and going forward. And so we are here again to educate, present, present and connect. So you'll get a chance to do that. Here's some lovely things that people have said about us on various social media platforms, right? So if you have a great experience today, we would love it, love it, love it, love it if you could go online to one of our social media platforms and leave even just a comment that says, hey, I had a great time today. I really encourage entrepreneurs to show up to this event. That helps us to spread the word about the community. And we also do have in-person and virtual gatherings. And what I mean by that is on the second Wednesday of each month, excluding August. We will be taking August off, by the way, but back in September, we have this regular cadence of the second Wednesday of each month. We do an in-person and virtual event currently hosted by Expansive in Pioneer Square. So if you are in the Seattle area, you'll want to mark your calendars. It's a great opportunity to show up, but if you're not, you can still be there. We have a really cool thing where we have the screen showing and people can see you and you can see them, and we've got all the mics working. We figured out how to create a good positive hybrid event. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors. The Method Customization and the McLaughlin Method are a few people who've really donated their resources to us to make sure that we have the systems and tools that we need to be able to thrive as a community. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we've got our volunteers. Here's a few of them on the screen. We have a few more inbound and onboarding. And of course, there's a little question mark that is missing your picture, clearly. So if you're so inclined to join us as a community, you are more than welcome to. There's a couple of ways that you can get involved. First of all, we do ask for support on very specific tasks. So maybe there's one thing you can do for us, and just the one thing. It might be like, hey, I know you've got a live event and I've got a friend in Seattle that can donate coffee. Let me do an email introduction. Done, boom. Okay, that's great, thank you, right? But maybe you want to take on another role. I know, for example, our chapter needs some support around social media and broadcasting what we're doing. And so if that's a skill set you have and you want to jump on board and help us with that, that would be super helpful too. You just email us at Seattle@1millioncups. The cool thing, just as an aside about being a volunteer in this community, we have really good systems. We're super, super organized. For example, Tiara Bonds is our chat monitor today. There's a whole manual on how to be the chat monitor, and all the things that she's putting in that chat, she copy and pastes from the chat monitor manual. So you literally just have to show up and do the thing. It's super beautiful. It's one of the best, well-coordinated volunteer communities I've been a part of. And so what can you expect today? Well, we are about coffee and conversations, or tea and conversations. So as you came into the room, we were chatting, connecting, getting to know where people were from. And then we'll shift into a 6-minute presentation. Today we have a presenter who I'll talk about in a moment, Adrienne Clancy, and she's going to share a little bit about the organization and then a new project and initiative that the organization has been working on. And then that'll be followed by a 20-minute Q&A. So as you're listening to the presentation, please feel free when the Q&A portion comes up to raise your hand, and we'll facilitate some of the conversation around that. And then of course, afterwards, we'll have some space to go into breakout rooms so we can get to meet some of the attendees, pass our virtual business cards, and continue to connect and network. So just a couple of requests in our presentation today. Be a supportive listener. So really try to avoid the text message or the phone call if it comes, or the email. You can kindly say no thanks at this moment. I'm giving my attention to this person here, and limit those distractions. It's great to have your monitor on or your video on if you can, because we know that we get energy from the people who are seeing us. Body language is a part of our communication, right? And so as you're listening, pay attention to what stands out for you. If anything comes to mind, if there's an idea or a thought, you're like, oh, that reminds me of this other thing, or these people over there, that organization over there, right? Listen for the possibility of connections that you can make. Listen for things that you want to learn more about. Maybe there's something that comes up and you're like, hey, I don't understand that, or I'm curious about that, or that's something I'm dealing with in my business. I wonder what our presenter has done. And so maybe that can be the way that you ask your question. And of course, each of you comes with your expertise and your knowledge in your respective industry. One caution on that: this is not an opportunity to tell them what to do, but rather to ask a question that's based on your insight and knowledge. So for example, I have a lot of experience in the accounting sector. So I might ask a question like, hey, I'm really curious, as an accounting professional, what are you doing to create a cash flow management tool for yourself? Can you talk a little bit about your finances, right? By asking the question that way, it reflects on my expertise, but puts it in the hand of the presenter to decide how to talk about that area of their business. And so ultimately, remember, we're not here to tell them what they should do, but rather to ask questions that will invite them forward to explore the possibilities of what their programs and businesses can do for the communities they serve. And so again, when we get to the Q&A portion, you'll just use that little raise hand button. If you can't find it, don't worry, just wave your hand or do something or chat in the chat, and I'll find you and make sure that I pull you forward to ask your question. And with that, we are going to shift into our presenter today, Adrienne Clancy of ClancyWorks Dance Company. So I'm going to stop my share for a moment so that Adrienne, you can introduce yourself, and I will go ahead and pin you to the screen here. Let me do that now. I'm also going to make you, Dan, co-host, by the way, in case something happens to my technology. I realize I did not do that before. All right, let me pin you spotlight for everyone. I'm going to spotlight you, Adrienne. And if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then let me know when you want me to share the slides, and we'll take it from there. Over to you, Adrienne.
Great. Well, first, a huge thank you to the Million Cups community. I felt the warmth when I was in one of your sessions on that second Wednesday in person, and I just really appreciated the warmth and the interest of your community. So when Matthew asked me to present, I said, of course. As he said before, I am Adrienne Clancy. I am the founding director of a nonprofit 501c3 tax-exempt organization based in Maryland called ClancyWorks Dance Company. And I do want to acknowledge there's a few collaborators on the call with me. Fernando and Keith work with ClancyWorks, and Matthew and Tierra have also partnered with us with some other projects. Our mission at ClancyWorks Dance Company is to advance positive social action through four main areas. Those areas are performance, arts and education, community engagement, and professional development. So we are known at ClancyWorks for having performance always at the center of our work, and we use our choreography to research social and civic questions that we are feeling as individuals, and then we go into the community and workshop and ask those questions to research, to gather other points of view for us to create our work. Then oftentimes our dances are used not only for performances, but we always engage audiences with dialogue to talk about what the actual work is and what's happening in the work, and to get more points of view on what they're seeing. Because of that, our dancers are often asked to be a catalyst for conferences. For example, we recently did for the World Bank, they had their annual conference, and we had created a dance on the theme of resilience. And it just turned out that the World Bank was doing a conference on resilience. Our dance asked the question, how do you absorb the shock of a blow? And whether that was as an individual, financially, how as a community we all felt the blow, right? And we're all kind of dealing with the recent stress and the trauma created from the pandemic. But basically tried to figure that out and to figure out how are different communities and different individuals resilient. And the World Bank actually brought us in because of their resilience conference. They used our dance as an overarching theme. So basically we had the conference members show the dance in the beginning. We showed the dance to the conference members in the beginning. And then what the conference members saw in the dance, they related to whatever workshops they were going to present. So it created a nice dialogue and got everyone connected for this resilience project conference that they were having with the World Bank, using our dance as the catalyst. That's just one example. But I would say all of our research goes into our dance classes as well as all of our projects. Recently, and today I would really like to talk to you specifically about our most recent project called B.R.E.A.D, Building Racial Equity in the Arts Through Dance. ClancyWorks has always been known, as we said, to use our dance to promote positive social action. But what we realized, we've always done this since we were formed in the last 20 years through inclusivity and also through diversity. But we realized that we weren't very, very intentional and specifically calling out equity. So within the dance world. So we created this program, Building Racial Equity in the Arts Through Dance, 2 years ago. And it's been extremely successful. And basically, as you can see with Matthew, thank you for showing that. We had a few sponsors because for us, it's really important that we try to create programs where the participants do not have to pay. So we find sponsors and funders who can actually then help us support the actual work so that we can bring in participants without having the barrier of economics. So those are some of our partners that we had. We were based in Maryland, so a lot were Maryland based. And in the B.R.E.A.D session in year one, we're now going into our third season, but in the first season, we had 22 presenters. Actually, I'd say, Matthew, if you want to go to the next slide, that would be great. What I realized first was I needed some support and advisors to build this program. So we created, keeping the metaphor of bread, our advisors were called bread bakers. And these were our bread bakers, Dr. Vanessa Jackson. She is the chairperson of an HBCU in Baltimore called Coppin University. Regia Finney-Myers was our strategic partner. She works with Race Forward, which is an organization in California that does a lot of anti-racism work and has a lot of curriculum and structures in place. And Devon Wallace is one of the dancers who works with us, but also many, many other organizations in the area, who's a brilliant thought leader, choreographer, dancer. His focus is in hip-hop techniques. Great. And if Matthew, if you want to go to, and then just the slide before, just for 1 second. So you could see we had 22 sessions, and these were all of our facilitators, and they talked about topics. So basically the first year was these one-off topics, and we would focus on a dance form that was born from a culture that had been oppressed. So basically, and then they would present and focus on their dance forms, and then that would create dialogues that would talk about how we can address that within our own dance worlds. What did we learn from that? So for example, some of the topics were, what did we learn from Soul Train? What is Jamaican dance hall and twerking? Is it really about body shaming, or is there actually a deeper philosophical cultural history that people are not aware of? We talked about the hoop dance in Native American cultures and the healing processes, as well as flamenco. So basically any form of dance that is either built by indigenous peoples or people of color were the focus of the first year. And thanks, Matthew. You could go to the third slide. Out of that, we had 22 sessions. We basically, for 11 months, January to November of 2021, it was 11 presenters. We did the sessions twice just for scheduling purposes. We had a total of 471 people who applied each throughout the whole year. Because it's virtual, even though people would register, about 47% would show up. So total attendance was 228. Basically, unique customers or partners, participants would be 394, and 77 people came back every single session. Out of that, there were repeating 77 people who would come back every session. Or different sessions. Excellent. And then the next slide, Matthew. And then, so season 2, so the first one we realized, oh my goodness, it was amazing. But we spent a lot of time marketing the sessions and then having people register. Then we realized what people, and our feedback that we got was that people really appreciated the information, but they wanted to talk more. So we created a B.R.E.A.D cohort, and that was year 2, where people would just come and they would discuss and dialogue challenges. We had 22 applicants. We really only wanted to accept 10, but we felt like we had to do a little bit more since of the applicants. So we accepted 17. Out of the 17, 15 were able to actually participate. 2 were not able to make all of our 5 sessions. And what we did was we asked every participant to concretize their ideas into a project. And this way, with the project, we would be able to measure what actually was the impact that they made in their communities, and also to check in with them in 6 months and a year to see, are those projects still going, who learned, and what did they learn from it. And the next slide, Matthew, just as a last. Yes, so basically, oh, actually, you could just stop the slides for a second. We'll go back to that. That's our info. I know I'm supposed to give a quick ask, and I'm just going to quickly give an ask because I know I'm running out of time. But my interest really, especially within the B.R.E.A.D program, is to just see specifically if we could find some partners who would be interested in collaborating with us in key programs. So it happened in the third session, and I would just say this. So we had a whole bunch of master classes, year 1. Year 2 was our cohort. The cohort had 5 topics: community, communication, curriculum, currency, and the concert or the project itself. So we were able to subdivide the ideas of their project into these themes. What came out of that was that everyone was super excited about all of them, but specifically about currency. And how do we find racial equity through finances and financial equity across generations. So our next cohort in the fall that we're in the planning stages will be focused on racial equity and currency and finding equity in finances. And Tiara Bonds and Matthew Hegum are going to be leading that session. So if you wanted to talk a little bit further about that in your Q&A, you can ask them a little bit further about what they're planning. But again, we're really looking for corporate partners who want to partner with us to make this happen, to expand the range of what we can do within the dance worlds. Again, not just for dancers, but we're focusing on the dance world as a beginning place. We also we're a nonprofit, we're always looking for board members. So if you are interested in serving on a board, or if you have friends, we are specifically looking for ideas about people who are experts in their field in terms of public relations, data science, because we have to do a lot of measuring on their impacts, thinking about some technology entrepreneurship, really figuring out the equity issues that come up with technology and how can we support that in terms of different communities. Always accounting, CPAs are useful. And of course, copyrights and trademark attorneys, because what's happening is that we're continuing to do a lot of B.R.E.A.D. We want to be very equitable and clear about all of the products that are coming out of the program, and to be really transparent in terms of how those are being used. So now you can do the last one, which is finishing our website, our information.
Cool.
If you want to come and join us, we would love to
Yeah.
hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you, Adrienne. And yes, so Adrienne, you did that perfectly. As you all, many of you know, we asked that question, what can the community do for you? So Adrienne just went right to it. And so now you know and have some context. And if you're curious, you can obviously get in contact. There's the contact information there. But I am seeing a couple of questions. I did see at least one hand raised up. So we're going to shift into the Q&A portion. Please feel free to raise your hand or just wave your hand, and we'll get this party started. And with that, I see Christine, I see your hand up. So let's start with you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh. I'm not surprised that currency came up, especially when you're working with groups, that has been the number one way that they've been squashed down. And I'm curious, are you familiar with Augusto Boal, Theater of Liberation? Because I'm just curious, as folks dance out the stories of oppression and exclusion, if there's a way to frame that that's reclaiming the power and the beauty and not just the hard stuff. That's
Yeah.
okay.
I love it. Yeah, Theater of the Oppressed. I just put it in the chat for people. Boal and also Freire talked a lot about that, using pedagogy as an active way to really shift dynamics in terms of equity. And yeah, so what happens within our dance is we show the positive ideas of it, and we let you think. So, for example, like one of our resilience, the opening was, we use the Stevie Wonder, "Don't you worry about a thing." So my husband always says, "Don't sing," so I won't sing for you. But and then basically we had some dancing in the front that was really fun and everything. Really like, yeah, don't you worry, don't you worry. And behind the projections were like global warming, what's happening in the politics. If it was, we did the dance 3 years ago, but we would have had scenes of January 6th showing up. So ways that were not necessarily, and we would show both Democratic, Republican issues that are coming up. So it wasn't biased, but a way to kind of help people just think, and encased in a sense of humor, so people can kind of think a little bit differently and open up the channel. But I do appreciate, yes, always with a way to be positive and how to keep moving forward positive, because if we just focus on the trauma, right, we're stuck in this like healing phase. So we want to get to the place of, yes, we have to do healing, but then how can we move it to action? Great question.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Dan, I see your hand up next, and then after that, we'll do Emelina.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm curious, as far as part of your ask was corporate sponsorship and trying to get organizations involved with it. And oftentimes with large corporations, you might have an individual, maybe there's somebody that is interested in dance or some of the issues that you guys are tackling. They almost always have to go to somebody and convince them. I'm wondering, if you're talking to an organization like a corporate sponsor, what's the top value that you feel your organization is providing with the program that they would sponsor? What's the 20-second elevator pitch that brings them in that might generate some interest?
Great. Excellent question. I think the focus that we're specifically focusing on the dance world, because anti-racism work is so huge. So the ability to say, let's focus on this one area, and in an area, quite honestly, if I'm not sure how many dancers are on the call, but a majority of dance that dancers utilize are really built from indigenous and African American cultures, African cultures. So it's the one thing that I would say this, and this is the great question that you have, Dan, and this is, I would love to have information from anyone. This is where I could really use some support. Whenever I pitch it on the phone, people are so excited. They are like, oh my gosh, yes, yes, yes. And then we send in the application or we go to the next step and then we get denied. And some of the feedback I did get from people was just, it's, let's remember our country is split. So although people on the surface may say, yes, 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 they're so interested in supporting racial equity, then when it's in more of a private situation, then they may, act differently. So that is a huge question. I would say that what we have been trying to do is find like-minded funders and corporations, so we don't have to, and we don't want to have to change the minds of anybody, but people who are already interested. So that's our ask. And we have been mostly going through, our nonprofit has mostly been doing county and state, which we've been very successful to get funding from there. But to get to the next level, we're thinking about corporate sponsors. And again, these are sponsors so that the participants don't have to pay, and that we could pay our facilitators and just make the program happen. I also do want to say that we did pay our participants a stipend. So part of that goes to also like giving a stipend to the participants who are showing up for their time and to help make their projects happen. But I'd need help with that. We're trying, and I just see, Dan, exactly. I see people in the forefront in a facial. They're so excited, and then they never want to do the action. So any support you might have, Dan, I would love to hear that afterwards.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Adrienne. Now I see a question from Emelina. Go ahead, Emelina.
Okay, you actually just answered this, but I'll give you space to talk about it more if there is more, about how you pay your artists, why you pay your artists, and how that all works, because I think that's an important part. So it's great that you give them stipends as well as giving them the low entry access, or low barrier access, I guess.
Yeah, Emily, that's a great question. And I do want to say from the very beginning of ClancyWorks, I tried to shift the model. So in dance, usually it's your administrators that get paid first and foremost and the artists last. So we reversed that from the very beginning, even though we had I think our first project, we had a budget of $1,000, but the idea was we paid the dancers first. So all the administrators, all the upper level, didn't get paid. They contributed their times. And how do we do that? Is literally county and state. I have to say, we living in Maryland. So come on, y'all, come on out to Maryland. Maryland is pretty liberal and they're really arts focused. So there has been a lot of interest. And then also I would say, because it's a liberal state, all of the arts people and county council people are very aware, and because we're so close to DC, they're very aware of the issues within racism and equity. So that's been at the forefront, and I would say in a really good way, Maryland has been putting people in leadership positions who are of color, which has really shifted our granting dynamics over the last 7 years.
Thank you. Zuki, I see your hand up as well. And by the way, we will have a few more minutes for questions. So if you have any questions, now's the time to get into the queue. Zuki, over.
So I love what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. So I appreciate that you've got a nonprofit doing this. A little bit background for you about me is when I was in college, somebody kind of dragged me along and I ended up being in the Repertory Dance Company, and I'd never danced before. So my questions and thoughts for you are this. One of the things that happened each year for our Repertory Dance Company at Michigan State was we had a guest choreographer. And normally our campus choreographer would go out, learn it, and come back and then teach us everything, and then we would do the dance. My thought was, if you want to really hit some people who are open to and open-minded to racism and all that, I think college campuses are a great place. And maybe you could create a dance or a series of dances that could then be, instead of having your own dancers do it, have the repertory companies and the arts programs at colleges across the nation perform. And with the day of Zoom, you don't have to have travel to teach them. So you might even be able to do with lab notation, I guess. But anyways, that's just a thought. But I love the idea of what you're doing. And I've got some friends in the Baltimore area, and I'm going to reach out to them. Some of them are fairly large companies. And so maybe I'll have some, but it's been a while since I've talked to them. Just want to let you know.
Word. Thank you, Siggy. And I heard you say Laban notation. So I didn't know we had somebody who knew that in this community. That's so funny.
I don't know it. I just know of it because I never took that level of dance training, but it was there.
What? And then I see Valerie too. Okay, so apparently we've got some underground dance enthusiasts in the space that I didn't even know about. So that's super cool. Thank you, Ziggy. Thank you, Valerie. All right, Christy, I see your hand up as well. You want to come off mute and ask your question?
Hi, yes, thanks, Matthew. Adrienne, thank you so much for your presentation. It's awesome, so amazing to hear about. And I wanted to ask you, I saw on one of your slides that you partnered with some organizations in schools. That was just one thing I would love to know a little bit more about. Specifically, I think in adult years, especially now, we're realizing the conversations that were not had when we're younger, like, especially in safe spaces like this that you're creating. So I just love to hear a little bit more about what that aspect of your business is.
Great. No, that's huge. And Keith or Fernando, I don't know if you could just put the link to our TED Talk in the chat for me. That would be great if possible. So yeah, it's and I would say this because of I was asked to do a TED Talk. The focus, basically for me, I would say in a really an honest way, just going backwards. I don't know if you could see. I identify as mixed race. My mom is from South America, Guyana, and my father's from England. So I always often pass as white, not always, depending on how white the community is. I would say very honestly, but for me it was always just something that was very obvious from the very beginning. The difference is because when you could pass in different communities, you start to hear what the conversations are in and of the different communities, and scary, I would say sometimes. So I just want to say, in terms of education, and luckily I grew up in the suburbs of New York in the mid '70s, and it was a very diverse community. So all of my best friends we were all of different backgrounds. So from a very young age, everyone just talked about it. It was very transparent. So I do have to say, I create structures in our dance. I see immediately where the breakdowns are happening, obviously from my own perspective. And then we create a lot of structures to try to break that down. And I try to build trust immediately. So in addition to talking about whatever the curriculum is that we're doing, we can actually talk about race, because especially, Zaki, you said in the Baltimore area specifically, although DC and Maryland is pretty diverse, Baltimore primarily is, Black and white. There's not that many Latinos or people of indigenous cultures there. There obviously are, but that's what you really see. So when you walk into a classroom, immediately I would say, let's partner up. And you see all the white kids go together and all the Black kids go together. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't teach like this. So how do we create those structures? So I would say, and anyone who's danced in the company, although we're always promoting quality dance, I'm always aware of the power structures and how can we use the art to undo that and to have a conversation, an honest conversation immediately. So Christy, I don't know if that does help you, but if you want to contact me, we could talk a little bit more, because curriculum is something people bring me in a lot to say, how can I try to like let's look at my curriculum and see how we can make it a little bit more diverse intentionally. But I'd love to talk to you further about that. But I always just say, it's how to make sure that you have the conversation and you build the trust, because I feel like a lot of this work, although we had people do it in projects, it's through communication where all of a sudden our own biases are realized and in action, and then that's the chance to say, hey, let's frame that, and let's just reshift that. Let's shift that again to something more positive, and not in a way that anyone's targeted, or anything, but just really an honest conversation. But the trust building it has to be there from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. Thanks so much. I feel like you're building real, true community that way. So it's really wonderful to hear. So thanks for that.
Yeah, and I do have to say, since I just want to say quickly, as I appreciate everybody giving me, but again, as I say, Matthew's been working with me for 18 years on and off doing his own work. Keith and Fern, we have a whole team, so it's never just me. I always find people who have better skills than I do, which is why I'm presenting here. I want to find people who know more than I do who can join us.
Word. All right. Well, thank you, Adrienne. So we are going to wrap up the Q&A session, but as we do wrap that up, I'll share your contact information slide screen, Adrienne. And as I'm doing that, if you just want to recap your ask again, so that people can really hear what is it that the 1 Million Cups community can do for you. So if you want to go ahead and come off mute and just restate that, and then we'll move on from there.
Great, excellent, and thank you again. So partners, corporate or otherwise, we're asking for corporate just because we have been doing a lot of grants, and then we have been just recommended to try to find people who are just not always focused on grants. So corporate partners who are interested in helping us to build specifically the B.R.E.A.D program, but if they're interested in any of the other programs, and I say because the focus on the financial literacy, I think, is something everyone wanted to hear. That was really what came up, but I also think that would be something that corporations may be interested in trying to support. And then just experts in the field who would like to join our board. It could be an advisory board or the board of directors, because we're always venturing into areas that, we don't know too much about. So we know a lot about it, but we also know our blind sites. So we always want to see, like, how many more people can we help to be on the team to help us uncover those blind spots. So again, really specifically, board members, accounting, trademark lawyers, perhaps, public relations and fundraising is always a good one, technology and entrepreneurship. And then share our website. The third one, just share the information, because we really work on a thing, the more the merrier, the more, as you're seeing, like the B.R.E.A.D program, the new reiteration is Matthew and Tiara are going to lead that. So I wanted to highlight that. It's often, I really just want to defer to, I look for the expertise around me. And I think what I'm really good at being as the person who's like, okay, we could create the space and find those partners to make it happen.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Adrienne. And so you answered that question beautifully, so we appreciate that. So if you know any resources that would help ClancyWorks to continue their work and to build their B.R.E.A.D program specifically, that would be awesome. Please reach out to Adrienne. You had her contact info, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't looked at the chat at the moment, but I'm pretty sure Tiara has dropped Adrienne's contact info as well in the chat, so you can reach out to them and get started from there. And if you yourself would like to present, please go to 1millioncups.com/Seattle. It's really simple to get in queue. As a reminder, we are taking the month of August off, but we hope to have a full pipeline of presentations September, October, November. So for those of you who are interested in presenting, all you need is the following. You are trying something new. So as Adrienne indicated, that though the organization has been around since 2001, this B.R.E.A.D program is a brand new program going through this sort of iterative entrepreneurial process as that builds out. So if you're working on something new as an organization, please bring that to the table. Of course, we ask that you're willing to ask for help, right? We want people who are looking for resources and community connections to get to the next level. And also our presenters want to learn something. As Adrienne fully acknowledged, there's things she does not know, that the team does not know or needs help getting a better understanding of. And so this is exactly what we're looking for you and your community members. If you have something you need help with, come show up, do your presentation, ask for the help, get connected with the community. And as a reminder, and we will get into the breakout rooms in just a moment, but as a reminder, we are also still looking for volunteers. I said it earlier, specific tasks, also very clear codified tasks. Please reach out to us. We'd love some support continuing to build this network and this community. The organizing team does have some internal planning meetings scheduled for August. So now would be a good time to reach out to us and say, hey, I'm interested, but I'm not quite sure what makes sense for me. Fine, great, show up to some of those organizer meetings. We'll find a role that makes sense for you, that's meaningful for your skill set and your time, right? We want to be mindful that everybody has different time capabilities or capacities. And next week, I'm super excited that we'll have Emelina Pedigo of The Show Goes On presenting. Emelina just so happens to be in the room. So actually, Emelina, if you wouldn't mind coming off mute for like 5 seconds and just like give people a taste of who you are and what to expect so that they can tell their friends why they should be coming next week. That would be super cool.
Okay, awesome. Oh my gosh, 5 seconds. Well, I feel like when I enter into these business communities, which I love, and there's a special place in my heart, I tend to stick out like a psychedelic thumb. So that'll give you just a little taste of where we're going next week. We're going into psychedelic capitalism. And yeah, there's so much more. So please come and check it out. There's lots going on and lots to be said. Thank you.
Thank you, Emelina. Yeah, it's going to be an awesome presentation and a great presentation to close out this season before we come back again in September. And so now we're going to, and just last quick reminder, please save this link. Again, remember, this is an important link. This is all you need to stay in touch with Seattle 1MC. And so with that, we're going to go into our breakout rooms. Let me just check the time. So we've got about 15 minutes left. Go ahead. I hear you. Yeah.
I think Tiara is not a co-host.
Oh, great. Okay, then let me make her co-host. And then Tiara can do the thing. All right, so I just made you, Tiara, a co-host. I think you're on twice. Let me make both of you a co-host. Make co-host. Yeah, and so we can just do randomized rooms, Tiara. That works. I think we've got enough people in the space that the numbers should fare out accordingly. So when you go into your breakout rooms, let me just go back to my screen here. Please take a moment to get to know the person. One of the tools that we use in this community to get to know people, we recently introduced it, is called PACE. It's an acronym that stands for Passions, Achievements, Communities, and Endeavors. So find out what this person is passionate about. Find out what communities they're connected to. Find out what they're working on. Are they writing a book? Are they building a brand new business? Are they looking for a new customer segment? Who knows? Find out so that you can be that resource for them. Use the acronym to kind of unlock what those intersections are between you and them and their communities, and how we might be able to support each other and get into a conversation. Please don't forget, there's another acronym I want you to remember. So we got PACE, Passions and Achievements, Communities, Endeavors. We also have NIS. Remember, that stands for Next Interaction Scheduled. If you don't have something on the calendar, it's most likely not going to happen. So if they say something that triggers something for you, even if it's a 5-minute email, you put it in your calendar, NIS, Adrienne Clancy, send her an email about that corporation in Baltimore. Check, it's done. It's in your calendar, NIS, check. With that, Tiara, do you have the breakout room set up and ready to go? I assume that's, yeah, there it is.